No? Yes. Okay. So yeah, optimistic topic. For some time, couple of years, now it's more than 6, I guess, I have been in this space, and the core of this space is decentralization. And I sensed from the beginning up until now that I cannot say nobody, but the feeling is that people are not happy with the decentralization as basically the percentage of decentralization of the ecosystem. And it goes for the whole Web3 world. But mainly I will focus on Ethereum because it is mostly focused on decentralization, that is its core value. This argument is not about UX and UI and stuff like that, but I think it is relevant for builders in this space because if it is right, then something is maybe conceptually wrong. It is brand new argument, so maybe the argument does not hold. But let's see together. So I wanted to expose you to the argument, and then we will go through it. So it follows like this. First part of the argument is meta its fundamentals. I will explain what does it mean. Then I will ask the question, does this hold for the Web3? And it's if it holds for Web3, it holds for Ethereum. So yeah. And then the third part of the argument is centralization goes up the stack from protocol to applications. And then the fourth argument is basically conclusion that because centralization and profits move in same direction, that may be the reason why we feel that Web3 is failing. It may be objective or subjective thing that is up to discussion now. So yeah, let's see. First part of the argument is meta its fundamentals. What does it mean? The best way to tackle this topic is via explaining in short something called law of conservation of attractive profits, which was written. How many of you have heard about this law? It's a non-scientific law, but nonetheless. Clayton Christensen, the author of Innovator's Dilemma and a couple of other famous books, basically created this law, which states that attractive profits will move to a next level of some chain. He calls it a value chain. It can be a tech stack or whatever. Once the modularity and commoditization cause attractive profits to disappear. So basically, if commoditization and modularity cause attractive profits to disappear, attractive profits will be basically moved to the next stage, to the next stage, to the next stage, to the next stage. So once we know that, one additional thought here is basically thought of Douglas Roscoff. I highly recommend that you read his books. Is meta is eating the world in a way. Not meta as a Facebook, but meta as a level that is derived from the fundamental level. So basically you have, for example, markets, real economy, and on top of that you have a derivative which is stocks exchange, for example, and on top of that you have a derivative as a derivatives market. And his claim is basically, for some reason, and nobody knows why, these meta things are eating the fundamental things. And one of the examples he is giving is that New York Stock Exchange, for example, was purchased by its derivative exchange. So basically, the exchange, which is derivative of the New York Exchange, had a greater value, so they could buy an exchange on top of which they exist in a way. So how would that basically function? If we have a value captured, let's see, where am I? This is value captured. The larger the box, the greater the value captured is. So if we have level 0, which is fundamental level, then level 1, which is derivative of level 1, meta level, and the level 2 is derivative of level 1, which is also meta level. The claim by Douglas Roscoff and a couple of other authors is basically that level 1 will capture the most value. And for example, Facebook, in the case of, this is the case, for example, for the markets, derivatives market will capture the greatest value. And for example, in the case of the web2 world, let's call it, protocol is TCP/IP. For example, Facebook will capture the most value, TCP/IP as a protocol will capture less value. And that may be the problem because at some point Facebook will buy TCP/IP. So the question is, if this is true, and we agree, and we may not agree, then does this apply to Web3? And there is, in 2016, an article, Joel Monegro, the title of the article is Fat Protocols. Basically, the author claimed that Ethereum or Web3 are basically reversing this kind of behavior, and fat protocols will become fat, application will become thin concerning the value capturing. So basically he stated that the market cap of a protocol always grows faster than the combined value of all the applications built on top of it. So that would look like this. So I will have a fat protocol, which is Ethereum, and I will have, and its value will be the largest than the all apps built on top of it. So I posed myself a question back then, like during 2016, is this really true? And so far, I'm trying to look at the Web3 world via that lens and to try to find the examples of this. But basically, I will find more examples that are counter to this. So basically, I will find more counter examples. And I just created a couple of counter examples that basically this still does not hold in Web3. And this is, so for example, Coinbase, which is an app, bought Bison Trails, which is a validator company. Celsius bought mining. Jump Trading, which is a trading company, bought Certus One, which is a staking. Or for example, Arbitrum, which is L2, bought Prismatic Labs, which built Ethereum 2.0. So, and additionally, for example, there is a large issue with foundations like Ethereum Foundation, having people go away to form startups which are on app. So you could be a part of protocol development, and you basically have larger incentive to go to build a startup than to basically be part of a protocol development. So yeah, so far you need to understand that law attractive profits basically holds in the same way for Web3 as for the rest of the world. Second part of the argument is centralization goes up the stack. So if we have some protocol which we have decentralized, and that is decentralized protocol number 1, that enables, other startups or organizations to build protocols on top of it, which may become decentralized, and that is decentralized, which enable basically these companies to build on top of it some decentralized protocol, and these number 2 protocols enable decentralized protocols on tech stack to build another protocol on top of it. So you, for example, maybe Ethereum, which enables Uniswap, which enables another protocol, which enables another protocol. My basically claim here is when you, first of all, it only makes sense to decentralize from bottom to up, because if you if you basically decentralize this protocol number 4, if everything below is centralized, everything is still decentralized. So it only makes sense to decentralize from bottom, and my claim is basically when you decentralize, for example, Ethereum, suddenly centralization goes here. If you decentralize via Uniswap, centralization goes up. So for example, in the beginning, there was no Uniswap, just Ethereum, and you basically needed to use centralized exchanges to do stuff on Ethereum. And after a while, first DEXs, which were expensive, came to be. So This is the second part of the argument. And finally, coming together these two things, and that is we need to ask ourselves what centralization slash decentralization and profit slash value capturing mechanism have in common. And my claim is that centralization goes in some direction as profits, and that may be the problem, why we feel that web3 is failing. So we have we have picture in picture. So on the upper side there is this is one picture image, and on the bottom side this is the other. So the question I pose myself is basically because profits and decentralization are decoupled. So profits can behave in some way and decentralization can behave in some other way. So they are not mutually dependent, let's call it like that. So profits, if we know that 0 is a fundamental part of tech stack, 1 is the next level of tech stack, so you can imagine for your convenience then 0 is, for example, EVM, and the third box is application on top of it. And the question is, how does the centralization, what is the direction of centralization? And basically my claim is it goes up, so as I said. But the question is, does the profit go up or it can go down? And basically, as I said previously, it doesn't make sense for profit to go down because meta is fundamentals. And also from the common sense perspective, it doesn't make sense for profits to be on 3 if 0 is not decentralized in any way. So my answer to this is basically for you to, in short, profits and decentralization are moving in the same direction. So at the beginning, for example, before Ethereum, profits would basically value capturing and value creating mechanisms were there, and then Ethereum started functioning. When basically attractive profits for startups disappeared on that level, Uniswap and this kind of things started to exist. So level by level, decentralization goes up and profits goes up and up. But the question is, which comes first? Does decentralization first come and then after that profits, or first there are profits and then decentralization? And my claim is basically that first profits appear and then after that level of tech stack can be decentralized. So, and it totally makes sense in a way. It's also common sense because basically the law of conservation of attractive profits says precisely that. If you make modularity and commoditization on top of basically Ethereum tech stack with EVM and stuff like that, attractive profits for startup will basically disappear on that level, and suddenly a bunch of startups will be attracted by the profits on the next level, and they will basically try to innovate there, make profits and decentralize stuff. So the question is, who will on that level start building first or create faster solution? Will it be when, for example, on third level, attractive profits came to be? Will you basically have startups which will be totally decentralized or semi-decentralized or centralized? And we can all agree that basically centralized solutions are more efficient in time. So you can build centralized solution more fast. So if you can build a centralized solution more fast and you can capture more profits faster than somebody who is building the centralized solution, then you will build it. Or maybe not you, but somebody else will build that solution. And why is that important? Because where new attractive profits appear on a new tech stack, new solutions for starts will always be centralized. And why is that important for us? Because at that point, users will always use that solution which is centralized, and they will feel that Web3 is failing because they are always using on the top level some centralized solution. And yeah, so, but the question is, if we have a finite number of these levels, so for example, we see that it is a final step of tech stack, then maybe we can hope that someday we will decentralize everything. So it's just a matter of time. So we need to take 5 years, 10 years, and everything will be decentralized. And yeah, we will have a solution. And the other possibility is that there is no finite number of these levels, and some levels disappear and new emerge. And then basically we have a problem, because on the final level which appeared now, all solutions will be centralized. And why is that important? Because of the users. So before that, this. So this may be a subjective thing, and maybe just users feel that things are centralized still. But one thing we need to know as builders is users want 100% of decentralization they want, not for it to move somewhere else up the stack. They are not interested in, like, I have decentralized tech stack number 3, and I will explain to you why is that important, and then they start to use it, and because of attractive profits appearing on number 4, they're using a centralized solution. So basically, we as a builder need to understand that users want, if they want decentralization, there is a possibility they don't care. But if they want, they will not be satisfied if first 3 levels are decentralized and number 4 is centralized. So they want that. And because of law of attractive profits, meta-inting fundamentals, and profits moving in the same direction as decentralization/centralization, this, if it is not infinite, if it is not finite world, they will always basically suffer. So, yeah, so in short, that is my argument. So, this is in short the argument. Meta is fundamentals. We can discuss if it is true, but so far we are counterexamples. This also holds for Web3. Centralization goes up the stack when we decentralize something as a startup, which enables other startups to build on top of it. These startups will be basically centralized for first part, while attractive profits are there, maybe commoditize and create a decentralization after some time. After that, they will move. Centralization will go up the stack. And because these things move into the same direction, and they are not finite set of things, Web3 is failing. Yeah, so yeah. I was shorter than I wanted to be, but that's it. So maybe we can discuss. Do you agree? Do you have any questions about this? Please.
Just wait for the mic, please.
Hey, so I think it's very interesting. But if we follow this logic, wouldn't it then be true today that all the rollups on top of Ethereum combined value would be quite like larger than the market cap of Ethereum, which is not the case?
But if you, yeah, I understand, but I'm not sure do attractive profits appear on L2 that are larger currently than Ethereum. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure in the facts how much do they have a value of. So maybe you can help me with, is it like...
Polygon is in top 10, and then other ones aren't.
So basically, first of all, maybe my argument is wrong, but what you claim is Ethereum still has more of a value than everything on top of it.
Combined, yes.
Combined, yeah. So I am not sure, does that say anything about Ethereum or everything about it currently? So maybe there are not enough users or not enough value on top of Ethereum for it to hold any value. Let me try to rephrase.
So the premise is, if the more
the real question here is, does that anything have to do, that kind of reasoning, does that anything have to do with fat protocols and thin layers in a way? Let me go here. So the claim with fat protocols, which would hold, which basically agree with what you are saying, is that the market cap of the protocol always grows faster than the combined value of the applications built on top of it. But L2 is just not only what is built on top of Ethereum.
Sure.
You agree?
Yeah.
So you just took just the L2, maybe that is my answer. But you need to take all the applications which are centralized also. So all the exchanges and whatever, all the wallets, all the derivatives, all the DeFi, you know. So I'm not sure if you take, like, for example, all the DeFi on top of Ethereum, does that premise still holds? So
okay, let me then start from a different direction. Like, you're saying that the centralization at the top level is problematic for the end users, right? Or
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
if they want decentralization, if we want,
yeah, maybe there is a claim that users don't care about
exactly,
it, but
yeah, exactly.
if they care, they have a problem with interacting on an upper level with the totally centralized parties.
Sure. And if we assume, like, today that gaming is one of the verticals that is, like, very popular and is transforming into a web3 industry quite quickly. So if we have gaming, for example, and it is produced, the games are produced by centralized game studios, right? But as long as the underlying protocol that is used to like exchange and keep and sell and buy certain items in the game is decentralized and allows
that basically is part of my argument. If it is finite, then we don't have a problem. They don't care about whole stack being decentralized. They just care about first three things, and that's it. Then that means that decentralization is a finite thing. So you need to decentralize concretely, like protocol level, maybe middleware, that's it. We solve the centralization problem. Then let's move on. We don't need Web3.
But okay, but maybe your definition of Web3 is different. But like,
yeah, basically any startup which is trying to build some kind of protocol on top of decentralized protocol is basically, if they are protocol, they will enable centralization on top of it.
But as long as they are infrastructure, they will never have the huge user base. The user base is for people who are
and
using
that's precisely
end-user apps, right?
maybe there is no general purpose decentralization and no infinite sets of decentralization, but then we need to maybe rethink decentralized supercomputer stuff and stuff like that, because they enable infinite sets of possibilities, and if you enable infinite sets of possibilities, you will suffer the problem with infinite number of centralization points.
Sure, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. But
I agree that if you have a finite number of things you need to decentralize, then you may not have a problem because you solve decentralization.
As long as the infrastructure on which the Web3 is built is sufficiently
I would not agree totally, because take an example of email. Email was totally decentralized from the beginning. SMTP, PUB3, IMAP. You could spin up your decentralized email server. You could communicate with other parties via protocol. But fast forward a couple of dozen years, you have totally centralized entity because of mainly spam, I think. So when you had, imagine billion people or zillion people using Ethereum, for example. And I will just walk you through the email example, and then we can switch to this, how would it function on Ethereum via spamming of the tokens and stuff like that. So at some point in time, for example, Gmail, which was using decentralized protocol, started having labels which are totally centralized, as they were not part of email standards. So they were convenient. So you couldn't use, for example, IMAP with them. You could use just the front end of Gmail. And after a while, basically, they won a bunch of users. And at some point, they have good spamming filters. And you could spin up your own email, but you needed now to spin up some open source spamming filter thing, which was not good enough. And at some point, they added social stuff and promotions and the tabs, which were also not part of the decentralized protocol. And at some point, they started blacklisting, for example, Microsoft, any email which is not recognized as top 10 email services. So you can still, in theory, bootstrap your own email service, but Microsoft will never get your email, my email sent to you or vice versa, because they don't care about the centralized part of the email. And it all happened because more or less spam and a couple of convenient things you could get via email. And that is precisely, I think, the problem of not thinking about the whole stack of decentralization and just focusing on three things. Because you can decentralize infrastructure and maybe decentralize middleware, but suddenly spamming with tokens becomes such a problem that people start using just one wallet, for example, because they do not want each day to have zillion different spam tokens on their wallet to filter them out and stuff like that. And suddenly you get a label on the wallet which you don't have as a standard. And suddenly you have a couple of convenient things. And then you end up with centralized solution which is totally centralized, which is using irrelevant decentralized protocol. So that was the reasoning why I thought that talking about infinite number of possibilities in decentralization is really important now, not 10 years from now, by saying it's just enough to have three things solved, because it's creeping up. You know?
Yeah, it's a continuous thing. Decentralization evolves all the time.
Yeah. And you need to think about the whole stack if that is important for your user, because it will creep up from somewhere which you never thought about because it is profit centralization point. As I said, a good example is email. It started totally decentralized, now it's totally centralized. So I think it's not just enough to think about first three things and say everything else will be good, because it will not, and we have experience in other decentralization tryouts like email is.
In Fura.
Yeah, you have for example. I'm really afraid, for example, as I said, with spam, imagine onboarding now 2 billion people. Imagine how much of a spam you will get on your wallet. So somebody would offer some kind of convenient solution and you end up in centralized thing. There is a possibility no one cares, but if we care.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the fundamentals of Web3 are based in open source, and I think that is something that will kind of help us continuously sufficiently decentralized.
Yeah, they are, but at some point they may not be. I have an experience of zillion different things of open sourcing by design, not by default. So open sourcing just the stuff they feel that they can open source and have a bunch of proprietary software which is not open source, which is basically, which is okay, but let's not talk about open source as being in Web3 by default thing. It's not. It's a bunch of, yeah, I see the shirt Polkadot. I know Gavin would force us to open source something while we're working there, but if, you know, but I don't know, from Starkware to For example, we were talking with Loopring. They claimed that, I hope that Loopring will not hear this, but they basically claimed they are a rollup, first ZK rollup protocol, but they didn't open source the sequencer, or how to call it. I was like, how are you protocol? We cannot use you, you know. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Time is
Okay,
up.
those were like 15 questions. Do we have some more? Okay.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. Can you just switch to closing thoughts? Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the second closing thought. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, basically what I said is if you don't have that statement that Web protocols will run the world in Web3, but you still have the Web2 premise, if your application, if your organization is creating some decentralized part of the stack, you are not solving users' problem with that, you're just moving users' problem on the next level. So you're not changing the game, you're just changing the player, because suddenly somebody else has a centralized entity which someday may buy the whole thing.
Yes, as derivatives stock exchange. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I think this is, this may be, I was thinking about, is this a builder's stage lecture? And I think it is for any kind of builder which is thinking about decentralization and providing users with decentralization. Centralization points may creep up, and don't lie to users that you solve their problems if you haven't thought about the whole stack. Maybe that's okay, but I need you to be aware of this.
Thank you, Malisa. Do we have some more questions for him? Okay.
Thank you. I'm interested, what do you think about the example of Uniswap? So Uniswap is kind of non-profit, but it has a token and the team has a lot of their own token. So you could say that kind of they have some economic value from the protocol, but they're not charging users for using the protocol. So is that kind of like maybe a midpoint between decentralization and capture of profit, or?
Yeah, good question, which means I'm not sure. So let me try to rephrase and see, did I understand? You think that by having a token, maybe they are not part of this reasoning. Let's call it like that. They had a workaround, something like that. Yeah, but I'm really not sure, because if you are to say that Uniswap basically has less of a value than Ethereum, that is true, obviously, but this is just one app. But the question is, if Uniswap is that kind of protocol which enables a bunch of successful startups to build on top of it, and at some point there may be a good enough startup which will have more value than a Uniswap itself, you know? Or something like that. I'm not sure. I cannot answer that question. Maybe I fucked up because I said here Uniswap and I was not sure to put it because I currently do not know enough about that ecosystem. So sorry, I cannot answer. But having a token, one thing I can say is by having a token, that doesn't mean that you are not part of this game. I think you are part of this game because you have a token. Because you can have a derivative which can basically swallow you. So if somebody is smart enough to create some kind of derivative on top of Uniswap, this is a threat to Uniswap. Or an opportunity, whatever. So I don't think by having a token you are not part of this game. I think precisely because of it you are part of this game. Because you follow the same rules.
Do we have more questions? No? Okay. See, I told you he's the best speaker of the day, not because he's my boss. Thank you, Malisa, very much.
Thank you. Hope it was good.